Step across the threshold and into the salt circle. Traditionally, a salt circle demarcated a space of protection, a shield against the unseen. Yet here, within these sacred bounds, we claim its deeper alchemy, not only to shield, but also to help us with our potential, to harness and amplify the raw, untamed energies of your hidden and true nature. This is the crucible where we meet the totality of ourselves. To unearth and heal the inner child, to confront and shatter the echoes of inherited dark legacies. Here we forge the strength to be rooted in your most authentic primal self, engaging in the elemental craft of alchemical self-transformation. It is here that we embark on the courageous journey of shadow integration, weaving darkness and light into the indivisible tapestry of your being, daring to understand yourself down to your most esoteric, ancestral, and distilled nucleus. I'm Daniela. I'm your guide within the salt circle, a forge for your inner alchemy, the breaking of generational curses, and the reclamation of your sovereign, unbreakable self. Today, we turn our unflinching gaze towards a core shadow aspect, a sacred wound, yet also a profound source of power within our inner landscape, the wounded Fae. This is the resonance of your inner child, not as a fragile, fading echo, but as the spark within. An incarnate dance between chaos and order, deeply woven with the primal energies of the cosmos and of the earth. This core divinity, this untamed power, persists as a potent elemental force, even when bearing the most profound alchemical imprints of trauma and abuse. Its true nature merely obscured, never extinguished, always awaiting to be reclaimed. So we approach this vital part of our primal self not to merely soothe it, but to understand its fierce wisdom and reclaim its sequestered power as a catalyst for our deep transformation. But what does this courageous reclamation actually entail? How do we move from identifying this concept to engaging in the practical, often challenging alchemy of healing? And that is the precise map for our journey together in this episode. We will begin by becoming psychological cartographers, tracing how these foundational imprints of early abuse and dysfunction manifest in the tangible architecture of our adult lives, in our relationships, in our self-perception, and our emotional realities. Then, equipped with this essential, often clarifying understanding, you turn from diagnosis into practice. We're also going to be exploring the art of reparenting. This episode will offer a toolkit of gentle yet potent techniques for cultivating internal safety, for compassionate listening, and for nurturing the tender landscape within. And our work is going to, culminate into illuminating the path towards true integration, a conscious and loving guidance of this powerful inner self, not merely towards healing, but towards a state of reclaimed and authentic wholeness. So, that being said, this descent into the heart of the wounded Fae demands both courage and conscious care. It is your sacred duty to yourself to forge a space around you that feels both like a fortress and a consecrated temple for shadow work, for these tasks. Gather what anchors you. May it be, candles, incense, blankets, pillows, a journal, some music, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what sense it caters to. The alchemical vessel of your body and of your spirit needs to be honored at all times. And should the currents of memory or emotion surge and swell with overwhelming intensity, know that pausing is not a retreat, but it's a crucial act of sovereignty. Anchor, breathe, and return only when you feel ready to do so, when you feel calm, when the path feels calmer. Your journey, your boundaries, your command are absolute here in the salt circle. So that being said, we're going to set an intention for this episode. We're really going to focus on what I just said, anchoring. All right. We now embark upon the foundational act of this inner work, anchoring. I invite you to consciously, powerfully connect with the earth in this precise moment. Right here, right now, forge a direct conduit, an unbroken line to the deep wellspring of your innate wisdom, the silent knowing that is already alive within you. Draw your awareness inward, a deliberate descent from the external world into the sovereign territory of your inner self. If you're willing, allow your gaze to soften or your eyes to close gently. A clear signal to your entire being that it is time to turn inwards towards your inner landscape. Now breathe. Not a shallow, unconscious breath, but a profound intake that plummets beyond the confines of your lungs. Down, down into the very bedrock of your being. And as you exhale, don't just release air, dismantle. Actively expel any dissonance that jars your spirit, any carefully constructed pretense, any psychic armor that has outlived its purpose and now constricts your ascent, your growth, your actuality. With each inhale and exhale, with each cycle, you arrive more fully and more authentically. Feel that anchor take hold immutably. Envision yourself as a pillar of light, a conscious axis mundi, bridging the resonant magnetic core of the dark earth beneath you and the boundless starlit expanse of the cosmos above. This is not a passive drift into oblivion. This is active surrender, a courageous yielding, not to an aimless current, but to the undeniable gravitational pull of your own authentic depths, the very center of your truest self, that nucleus, that nougaty center. And here, in this anchored stillness, dare Dare to allow the primordial silence within your being to unfurl. Vast, luminous, like a cosmic banner in a void from this profound emptiness, which is also ultimate fullness. Extend the brave alchemical act of radical acceptance, every facet of your experience, every sensation, every emotion, every shadow, every spark of light that comes from the depths within. This right here is the crucible. This is the unshielded space you have just claimed, the sacred ground of your own unmediated presence. Within this crucible of this hour, prepare to journey deep. We will not merely observe, but excavate the often exiled anatomy of the wounded Fae, venturing with courage into the uncharted, sometimes labyrinth territories where its shadowed lore lies. Together, we're going to map this out, this profound yet insidious foundational imprints that have sculpted the architecture of our very present life. But let me be unequivocal. This is not a sterile intellectual exercise. This is not just cartography on a piece of paper, mapping out our pain. This is to equip you and empower you. You will begin to forge and then wield an arsenal of deeply transformative practices, tools for profound self-compassion, methods for radical reparenting. And this, in its essence, is the primordial main ingredients of your self-sorcery. So don't just expect to unearth understanding. This is so much more than that. Prepare to actively ignite and catalyze the fierce, beautiful alchemy of your own becoming. Prepare to emerge step by conscious step as the ruler of your own fate, of your own healing, and the deliberate crafter of your wholeness. So let's understand the wounded Fae, your inner child, from a psychological and esoteric blend. From a rigorous psychological standpoint, the inner child is not a miniaturized self encased within you, right? Rather, it's a powerful and dynamic metaphor for representing the resonating core of your formative years. A complex tapestry woven from your childhood experiences, your most vibrant joys, your deepest sorrows, your potent memories, and the crucial emotional learnings that persist consciously or unconsciously into your adult life. The inner child archetype encapsulates the foundational blueprint of your beliefs about yourself, about others, about the world at large. And this is often etched in your earliest, most impressionable years. Consider this a living echo of your younger self within your psyche. The part of your personality that still perceives, feels, and reacts with the immediacy and intensity of childhood. It holds your innate capacity for wonder, your boundless creativity, your raw vulnerability. But crucially, it also carries unmet needs, the unexpressed emotions, the enduring imprints of past hurts, the psychic wounds that, until addressed, will continue to seek healing and resolution. The inner child concept isn't born from, crunchy fantasy or anything like that, but it's a profound psychological theory. Pioneers like psychologists Carl Jung illuminated what's called the divine child archetype as a symbol for, your future potential wholeness and success. And transactional analysis offers a practical model for the child ego state, revealing how these early patterns that our inner child holds, how it can continue to drive our interactions and reactions as we age and get older. So from from that, let's now bridge this understanding with esoteric or, a pagan lens, which often views the inner child not just as a developmental stage or childhood as just a stage in your life, but as a symbol of primordial essence. It is our purest, unadulterated connection to our spirit, to untamed joy, to really having fun and being carefree, and to our most authentic self before the layers of societal conditioning, expectation, and trauma start to accrue. And the term fae, like fairy, I use it here in the Wounded Fae to evoke something that is exquisitely precious, inherently magical, and profoundly symbiotic with the energies of nature and the unseen realms. So I also like to talk about the Fae-spark. Like, this is the beginnings of our own internal folklore. This is not only powerful, but it's sensitive. It's possessing a delicate energetic structure that can be easily disrupted, ensnared, or feel catastrophically lost or fragmented through neglect, invalidation, or traumatic impact. So almost like in essence, it's the indwelling ember of divinity within us. It is the untamed, intuitive aspect of our soul that remembers wonder, that speaks in symbols and yearns for authentic connection and unfettered expression. So, why wounded? Why wounded Fae? Why is the inner child wounded, right? So, when a child in its open state of development and profound vulnerability encounters trauma, be it the overt shattering of abuse, whether it's physical or sexual, or it's the corrosive emptiness of neglect, or it's the chronic instability of growing up in, dysfunctional, unsafe households, or even emotionally barren environments. This innocent, luminous Fae essence becomes deeply, often violently injured. And this is the genesis. This is the start of the wounded Fae. This is, how it becomes wounded. Trauma in its shittiest reality overwhelms the child's innate capacity to cope and integrate experience. It doesn't just leave a mark. It can fracture the developing sense of self, searing lasting imprints onto the delicate architecture of the nervous system, distorting emotional development, and poisoning the wellspring of self worth. The wounded Fae is the part of us that encapsulates these overwhelming experiences and holds on to the pain, the terror, the betrayal, often in silence, deep within the psyche. All right, take a second. As these descriptions unfold, I invite you to take a slow, conscious breath. perhaps another. Just allow the words to settle. When you hear the phrase inner child or my term, the wounded fae, what is the very first unfiltered sensation, image, emotion, or even a single word that arises for you? I don't want you to chase it. I don't want you to dissect it. Simply just notice. Witness it with a gentle curiosity, as if you're observing a really gorgeous, never before seen butterfly out in your yard. Is there a particular age or a specific felt sense of you at a certain stage of life that comes forward as you hold this awareness? Just be with whatever or whomever has shown up. There's no right or wrong answer here. Only your truth gently invited into the light. I want to now talk about echoes of the past and how, early dysfunction or abuse can really affect us in our adult lives and impact us. The formative, often traumatic experiences of our wounded fae are not relics confined to the museum of our childhood, right? They become deeply embedded, energetic, and psychological imprints, forging persistent patterns and sensitivities that actively and profoundly sculpt and too often sabotage our adult lives, frequently operating from the shadows of our unconscious awareness. So, these are common manifestations or reverberations of early wounds. So, one is emotional dysregulation. This manifests as a compromised capacity to navigate the intensity, duration, and ebb and flow of your emotional states. The inner landscape can feel chronically volatile or, conversely, unnervingly numb, right? Imagine feeling like instantaneously overwhelmed by everyday stressors, as if a minor little thing will spark into a catastrophe. And then, disorienting mood swings, emotional reactions that are disproportionate to the immediate situation. A surge of intense rage over a small inconvenience, or a chasm of profound sadness triggered by something minor. This often occurs because the wounded fae's innate emotional thermostat is either critically damaged by early chaos or never had the safe, consistent environment to be properly calibrated. Number two is, the unconscious reenactment of primal bonds, how we pattern our relationships and how we attach to these relationships. So we often see the unconscious, often very painful reenactment of attachment wounds and relational dynamics learned at the feet of our earliest caregivers, projected onto our present connections. So there are a couple of examples of that. One of them being codependency. This isn't just being nice. Codependency is a form of self-annihilation in service of others and insatiable need to rescue or please, and almost physical inability to articulate no, to set or honor your own boundaries. And, we're going to really dedicate future sessions and episodes to unraveling this very intricate knot. Another one is fear of abandonment, which is a primal terror of being unmoored, unkept, unwanted, often manifesting as anxious clinging in relationships, a desire or an intense feeling of distress when a partner or a friend seeks healthy space or holds different opinions, or the tragic pattern of remaining in deeply unhealthy relationships or situations simply to avoid the perceived abyss of being alone or being not liked or not having this person in your life. Another is, some individuals have a difficulty with trust or intimacy. And this is because there's an emotional fortress that has been built brick by brick from past betrayals. And it's a really profound struggle to truly let others in. And it's a pervasive expectation of being hurt again. You're expecting it, or it's a pattern of being emotionally unavailable to keep connection at bay. Another aspect of this is, it's heartbreaking and it's very common, but it's where you have an attraction to unavailable or harmful partners, and that could be romantic partners, that could be friends, that could be, work environments. Um, and this is a manifestation where the psyche, in its haunting familiarity with pain, unconsciously seeks to recreate and it hopes resolve the familiar yet deeply damaging dynamics of childhood. So another thing is, number three, another reverberation, um, is how we attach to people, right? Wait. No, we just talked about that. It's about our self-worth deficits, the tyranny that we put ourselves in from our own internal critic, how we speak to ourselves. And, this is often deeply etched, a core conviction of being fundamentally flawed or inherently unlovable, perpetually inadequate or incorrect, frequently accompanied by a relentlessly harsh and punitive internal voice. You know, the incessant whispers or shouts of self criticism, the relentless negative self talk, telling yourself, like, oh, I'm worthless. I'm never going to be good enough. This is why everyone doesn't like me. I can't get any friends because what, right? Recognizing it in the debilitating grip, you're going to also inadvertently be clinging to these imperfections. This inner critic is often internalized, amplified echo of critical, shaming, or abusive caregivers, a hostile accompanying force within your psyche. A lot of times, our critical voice in our head is our first bully. And usually, for a lot of us, our first bully is a caregiver. Another residual resonance of a tough childhood could be, maladaptive coping mechanisms, which are outdated survival blueprints. These are ingenious, once vital survival strategies forged in the crucible of childhood adversity. They were necessary then. And now in adulthood, these same blueprints often operate as outdated, unconscious, and profoundly self-sabotaging scripts. So, for example, maladaptive coping can arise as, perfectionism, not a healthy drive for excellence, but the desperate, exhausting pursuit for acceptance or love or approval or safety. The child might believe that if I'm flawless, I can't be hurt or rejected. Um, People pleasing is another one, which people pleasing is the systemic self forfeiture of your needs, your desires, your truths on top of an altar of external approval or conflict avoidance. Your wounded Fae learned early that your authenticity, your truth is dangerous, and your compliance means survival. Um, Addictions and compulsions. A lot of individuals might become addicted or have an unhealthy coping mechanism with substances, food, work, relationships, gambling. And it's honestly just a relentless search for solace. It's desperate attempts to numb unbearable feelings, to escape harsh realities that are not what you want to be faced with, or it's, to just feel something when there is such profound emptiness and unhappiness. Another is avoidance and procrastination, often rooted, people say it's laziness, and it's not. And it's honestly a profound, paralyzing fear of rejection, of judgment, or even of success if you're not used to feeling successful and that's unsafe or familiar to the wounded Fae. Dissociation, which is the psyche's emergency eject button. And to dissociate is to disconnect from your body, your emotions, your memories, and even reality itself. And honestly, it's a brilliant strategy that the wounded Fae employed to escape inescapable, overwhelming, traumatic situations. Another residual of the wounded Fae into adulthood is, the eclipse of joy, the eclipse of playfulness or authentic expression. There there is a stark separation or severance from the wellspring of spontaneous joy or innate creativity, of easeful pleasure, and the vibrant, unique resonance of your true self. Your life becomes muted, dutiful, and effortful. It's a pervasive sense of numbness, of, you're just going through the motions as if you're a ghost in your own life. It's finding it almost impossible to genuinely relax or to play without worry or without feeling like you're stressed. It's access to childlike wonder. And this happens because the wounded Fae, in its fight for survival, learn to silence authentic expression, to dim its light, believing its true self was too much, too little, or just unsafe to reveal. So, the deeper architecture of shadow work and of the inner child, the emergence of the shadow. Many of these unhealed wounds, these disowned emotions, these suppressed aspects of the wounded Fae's authentic experience do not simply vanish. They are often exiled. Think about that. These parts of yourself that you wish you didn't have, oh, I'm too emotional. I'm this. I can't be this. I can't be my true self. People can't see that. They won't like that. These parts of yourself that you're suppressing don't just vanish into thin air. They are exiled into the underworld of your psyche that psychologist Carl Jung, he brilliantly termed this the shadow. So when we talk about shadow work, that's where we're going. This shadow becomes the repository for all the parts of ourselves we consciously or unconsciously deny, repress, or deem unacceptable. So, healing, therefore, involves, the courageous and compassionate reclamation of these exiled energies, bringing them out of, the darkness, out of the shadow, into the conscious. You're integrating it from, an esoteric perspective. Profound trauma doesn't just impact the psyche, it creates dense energetic signatures or, blockages, or even fractures within our, energetic architecture, our bodies. The wounded Fae, in essence, holds these disruptive imprints, which can significantly dim our vital life force, distort our energetic flow, and obscure the clear signal from our sovereign spirit, our higher self, or our spiritual guidance. If any of what I've described resonates, if you feel a pang of recognition deep within your being, please, I implore you to take this truth to heart. These are not proofs or indictments of your character. These are not signals that you are inherently broken or flawed or beyond repair. These patterns, these recognitions, these coping mechanisms are testaments to your profound and sacred intelligence. They are ingenious, often desperate, survival strategies that your younger self, your wounded Fae, brilliantly developed to navigate and endure what was unbearable and what should not have happened. They worked then, and they kept you alive. They kept you afloat. They kept you going. And so the sacred challenge, the transformative opportunity in front of us now is not to condemn these strategies, but to honor their past service. And then from a place of grounded wisdom, of radical acceptance, of complete surrender, unwavering compassion for yourself, and newfound information and empowerment, you're going to consciously choose, learn, and integrate new, healthier, and more expansive ways of being that align with who you are today and who you're becoming. Having acknowledged the echoes of the past, right, we now turn towards the sacred transformative work of the present, the gentle and powerful path of reparenting and nurturing your inner Fae. So you could almost think about it like this is where the true alchemy begins. So reparenting, in its most profound sense, is the conscious, intentional, and alchemical act of providing for yourself now the essential emotional nourishment, safety, and validation that you needed and did not consistently receive in your formative years. It is a sacred journey of becoming the wise, fiercely compassionate, unwaveringly protective guardian to your own inner child, to your wounded Fae that you have always deserved. And just a crucial clarification, it is super important to understand that this is not about casting blame upon your past caregivers. Though acknowledging the reality of any harm or deficit is a vital first step towards authentic healing, but rather reparenting is about radically claiming responsibility for your inner landscape and your emotional sovereignty now. It's about, empowering yourself to break cycles and cultivate profound inner well-being, irrespective to the past. So some really good techniques or actions to forge this um, sovereignty of the inner landscape or to reparent the inner child. A lot of things we can do, or you know what, the number one thing we need to do that is a non-negotiable is establishing sanctuary. And that's both internal and external. So the very first thing you have to offer to your wounded fae must be safety. This begins with within and cultivating an unshakable sense of calm, security, and presence, especially when your inner child is feeling triggered, terrified, overwhelmed, or invalidated. So, a technique or a couple of techniques you can do to create that internal sanctuary is to practice grounding daily. And that's just engaging simply. It could just be breath work. You slow inhale, count of 4, hold for 4, and then do a deep exhale for 6 seconds, really feeling your body in this moment, your feet on the ground, your spine elongating. If you're clenching your jaws or your shoulders, really being grounded in that moment, anchoring yourself with your breathing. Um, I do this. I forget to breathe all the time, especially when I'm angry or overwhelmed. So don't feel silly to remind yourself to breathe. Breathing is important and it can be very therapeutic to anchor yourself with your breath. Um, some people focus on all of their senses, name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can taste, things like that. And that's not just to distract yourself or anything like that. If anything, it's to actively signal to your nervous system in its own primal language that you are present and that you have resources and that you are fundamentally in this moment for yourself, with yourself. Another technique is, the immovable space. That's what I like to call it, or the citadel. And you forge within your imagination a realm, an inner sanctum that is beautiful and peaceful and exactly what you want. And your inner child can retreat there to that absolute security. Um, Also, your external sanctuary. Concurrently, this demands an honest and really brave assessment of your current relationships and environments. Are there situations, dynamics, or individuals that constantly re-trigger, diminish, or actively harm, your inner child? Acknowledging acknowledging this is the precursor to potent boundary work. Just really being real with yourself about what is in your life, who is in your life, and how they are aligning with your true self or how you are allowing yourself to be mistreated for, whatever reason. And we're going to really dedicate a significant future exploration into boundary work and its mastery. Another thing to do, honestly, and this is really important, uh, branching off of internal and external safety, especially if externally you are in an environment or you have individuals around you that do not validate or hold space for you or care about your positionality. It's very, very important that your wounded fae, scratch that, let me restart that. So your wounded fae or your inner child holds so much unexpressed stories, universes of emotion, um, catalogs of unmet needs that are crying out not for judgment or dismissal or even to be fixed, but just to be seen, to have someone witness Validation is the alchemical key here. And it really means fiercely acknowledging and accepting feelings and perceptions as absolutely real. You do that for yourself, you do that for your inner child. You don't invalidate yourself along with everyone else. You have to really find confidence in saying, no, this is my reality. And it will really do something for your inner child. It has such a healing power to listen to yourself, to deeply understand yourself, and to validate yourself. You know, if our environment isn't perfect, what we can practice is journaling as a form of sacred dialogue and, engage with a notebook, a piece of paper, your diary, and write with your dominant hand. You write a completely honest letter to your inner child, just with open curiosity, and allow them to write back like it's an actual pen pal. And, you can ask them things or tell them things. You can ask tenderly, my dearest inner child, how do you feel today? What do you need most from me? What is a promise that I keep on breaking that you wish I didn't? And then what you do with that, you can wait, an hour or a couple of days. But you experiment writing back as your inner child. And how to best do that is you're going to use your non-dominant hand. By using your non-dominant hand, you can often bypass the sophisticated defenses and intellectual filters of your adult mind, allowing for rawer, more authentic voices to emerge from those deeper unconscious streams. Um, Another thing that we can really practice for ourselves is several times throughout the day, create a micro moment of pause, turn yourself inward, and gently, compassionately just talk to yourself. Inquire, how is my inner child doing today? How are you feeling in this very moment? And you don't have to fix anything. All you have to do is just simply notice. There's such a profound act of healing in acknowledgement and in attunement. And by giving that to yourself, even if no one else outwardly gives it to you, is such a powerful thing to do. Um, you know, a lot of us, to forge our new reality, we have to find an antidote to shame. And that comes from being very gentle, real, and compassionate with ourselves. So, like, approach your inner child with the same profound tenderness and infinite patience and understanding that you would instinctively offer to a physical child who is visibly in front of you, hurting and afraid. Self compassion is not indulgence. It's a medicine against the insidious poison of shame. When distress arises, consciously engage in actions that a loving, attuned parent would offer. Place a reassuring hand over your heart. I tap myself on the shoulder all the time. I hug myself, feeling, your rhythm, feeling your weight, feeling some type of somatic impact. You could wrap yourself in a really warm blanket. You can go out into the sunlight and photosynthesize really quick. Offer yourself some food, something nice, something yummy, really nice bubble bath, and offer yourself gentle words of support. You can say, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay. This sucks. I know it does. It's okay to feel this way. And you could even, say things like, inner self, I'm so sorry. Thank you for your resilience. I love you unconditionally and wholly. And when you start to replace these internal critics or these, you know, veins of shame, it really starts to have another kind of resonance, another kind of ripple effect to help restore balance, to help us meet these unmet needs with a deeper well of understanding and more patience for ourselves. Another key in creating that safer internal landscape is to take inventory. What essential emotional nutrients were scarce or absent in your childhood? Was it consistent protection, genuine praise, closeness, play, unconditional affection, profound sense of being truly seen or heard? You know, there is work to be done in identifying these core unmet needs, and then to discover a healthy, empowered, adult resourced way to provide this for yourself gradually and appropriately. So, like, here's some examples, to reclaim your birthright. This is what your inner child should be doing for you. So play and wild joy, comfort and deep security. With play and wild joy, if your childhood was starved of unstructured play, you can just be silly without criticism. You don't have to worry about how you look or if others are judging you. Um, you can consciously schedule and protect a time for activities for yourself that ignite pure, unadulterated joy and lightness. You can lose yourself in art, dance to music, like literally, like lock yourself in a room, blast some music, and just move your body. Don't even worry about, oh, I can't dance, I look weird. Just even if you just shake, like that somatic release, and we'll go into an episode about somatic exercises. That is very healing for your nervous system. You really have to engage in activities that completely absorb you and that dare you to not be self-conscious, to not be worried about doing it correctly. Um, the inner child or the inner fae, that aspect of you really thrives on play and on not being careful while playing. Another is comfort and deep security. So actively cultivating a home, a bedroom, a space that feels like a true sanctuary. Grant yourself permission to decorate however you want, to be completely, deeply restful and not ashamed that you're not being productive. You need to invest in your comfort and not hate on yourself when you seek to enjoy your comfort that you've crafted for yourself. That being said, another is, you have to become your most hardcore cheerleader. Consciously acknowledge and celebrate your small victories, your constant and consistent efforts, your acts of courage, and the boundaries that you're upholding. If you want to paint your room purple, who cares what anyone else says? Paint it purple and then praise yourself that you painted it purple because you did that for yourself. Amazing. I love that for you. You know, Even if you have trouble speaking to yourself kindly, maybe it's easier for you to write things down and you can just have a mason jar. Every time you do something that you you should be proud of or happy of, you write it down and you put it in a jar. And you just take a pebble, put it in a jar, and having that visualization of how many things you've accomplished that make you more solidified in your truth is so nice to see. It's like a log of your success. You're tracking your progress no matter how incremental. And another thing is to be fiercely protective of yourself. This is a very profound act of self-love, which is to learn to discern and articulate strong, clear boundaries with people, situations, or energies that drain, diminish, or attempt to harm you. This is you in your adult power, standing as a protector and as an advocate for your wounded fae. To branch up a little bit about boundaries, boundaries are really about protecting your sacred space. And when we talk internal boundaries, we have to dethrone that internal tyrant, actively challenge the insidious voice of your inner critic. When it unleashes harsh words at you, just pause and then think fiercely and clearly. Would I ever speak these words to an actual child? No. You have to confront these distortions and reframe its critical pronouncements with statements of compassion and of obviously object truth. Like you are not, you know what I mean? When it comes to external boundaries, the it really is an art to say no. Practice. It really takes practice to the art of saying no to requests, to demands, to situations, um, to any kind of relationship. Anything that feels like it's going to compromise your well-being or is going to make you compromise on your integrity, or if it just feels fundamentally misaligned with who you are as a person or safety in general, you really do have to do it for yourself to learn how to say no. And this might involve, a very gentle but firm way to limit contact or limit certain behaviors you have with these individuals. But, really remember that setting a boundary is a profound act of self-respect. It is defining where you end and another begins. This is so vital. Having boundaries is so vital because compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. So I want to take this moment now to do a sacred pilgrimage inward, which is basically like, guided visualization or meditation. Um, so now, to deepen this connection, please join me as we go on this brief guided journey. This is a sacred pilgrimage inward, an opportunity to meet your inner Fae, your wounded Fae, in a space of unconditional love and safety. Find a comfortable position, allow your body to settle. And if you feel ready and if you want to, you can gently let your eyes rest on a point in front of you, or you can close them all together. All right, relax and breathe deeply. Remember what we said about anchoring. You want to put yourself deep in this moment. Root yourself in the present moment where your body is in space and time. Really feel it. Really feel yourself here, now, doing this shadow work. I want you to visualize a uniquely beautiful, deeply safe, and maybe magical natural place. Maybe it is sun-drenched. Maybe it's a wildflower meadow, mist-laden forest, or a hidden cove by the sea. Visualize a sanctuary where the Fae self would feel utterly at home and incredibly safe. As you create this visualized inner sanctum with gentle encouragement, ask your inner child or your wounded Fae to come and hang out there. Invite them to sense or see what you are trying to create for them. And at the same time, simply become aware of the inner child that is appearing in this inner sanctum that you've created. Perhaps it's a specific age that feels relevant. Maybe it's just an energy signature. Maybe it's just a sound. Just invite whatever it is to come and take up space in this inner sanctum. I want you to remember that you have boundless compassion. You are openly curious. What do you notice about the inner child or wounded Fae that is now in the inner sanctum? Is it emotions that are spoken or unspoken? Maybe their posture? Maybe the color of the air around the energy signature? What seems to emulate or come off of the wounded Fae? I encourage you to give your inner child an understanding smile. Maybe you can open your hands to invite them closer to you, or just sit peacefully near them. Radiate unconditional love and radical self-acceptance without demanding anything in return. Maybe you can offer your inner child something, a symbolic gift of profound comfort or connection, something that says, you don't have to hide so much anymore. I will make it safe for you to come out and be integrated with the rest of myself. I don't want to hide you. Here is a glow stick. You really just want to dispel any fear. You want to create something warm and protective. Maybe even just a flower or a cherished toy that you yourself used to love when you were little. Assure this precious inner child that they are deeply seen and truly valued, and that they, as their adult self, is now here to care for, protect, and champion them. I want you to take a really deep breath and feel your lungs and past that expand. And as you breathe out, I want you to gently come back to your physical body, come back outward from your inner landscape, and be reminded of the room you're in. Feel where your feet are. Feel the wind around you. At this present moment, you are now carrying the sense of love you gave to your inner child out with you, outwardly and forward. It's going to take a minute for you to come back to the self outwardly. The ultimate aim of healing your wounded Fae is not to surgically remove this part of you or to fix it into some idealized oblivion so you don't ever have to deal with it again. This would be further damaging and wounding. The true path, the alchemical path, is one of sacred integration. It's about lovingly, courageously, and consciously welcoming this vital aspect back into the wholeness of your being, acknowledging its profound wisdom, honoring its legitimate pain, and celebrating its resilience, its astonishing, remarkable resilience despite everything. And understand this: the wounded Fae, once met with compassion and its needs consistently tended to, it also holds the most extraordinary shadow gold, this buried treasure, this treasure of creativity, of carefreeness, of exquisite sensitivity and confidence, razor sharp intuition, an immense capacity for deep, authentic empathy. This profound journey of healing and of integration is not a sprint to the finish line. It is a gentle, often spiraling, unfolding journey. Think of the subtle yet relentless magic of how tiny, seemingly insignificant seeds eventually crack stone, or how a fairy might meticulously and lovingly tend to a hidden garden. It is the small, consistent acts of self-compassion, dedicated listening, and conscious nurturing that compound exponentially over time, creating profound and lasting transformation. I invite you this week to choose just one small, tangible practice. Perhaps it's a dedicated 2-minute mindful check-in with your inner child each day. Perhaps it's focusing on rooting yourself and anchoring yourself in the current moment so you don't default to people pleasing and being on autopilot to avoid confrontation or friction. Maybe you can place an image that evokes comfort and reminds you of your inner self, where you will see it often. Trust in the power of these seemingly tiny, minor devotions. Allow these words to be more than mere sentences. Let them be declarations of emergent truth, deep resonation within your cells. These are potent incantations. I am anchored in safety, enveloped in love, fiercely protected now and always. My feelings, all of them, are valid signals from my soul, and I honor their wisdom. It is not only okay, but essential for me to have needs. And I am learning with courage and grace to meet them. I am a sacred work in progress, healing and unfurling into greater wholeness with every conscious breath. Envision your inner world, your psyche, as an ancient, magical, sacred grove, right? And within this grove, your wounded Fae might have been hidden for so long in the deepest shadows, maybe feeling lost and afraid. And by consciously choosing to tend to this inner grove as a sacred priestly act almost, Gently clearing away the accumulated debris of old limiting beliefs, planting vibrant seeds of self-compassion and acceptance, and intentionally bringing in warm, clarifying light of your awareness to its hidden corners. You are cultivating a sanctuary. You are creating the conditions where your Fae's true self can finally feel safe enough to step out, to heal, to stretch, to play, and even in time just be a child and scream in the sunshine and frolic around. And as always, remember the profound wisdom of nature's cycles, even after the most desolate winter of trauma, of loneliness, of making mistakes. The spring of healing possesses inexorable power. It can arrive, bringing with it astonishing new growth, unexpected beauty, and the promise of renewal. Together in this sacred session of the Salt Circle, we have journeyed into the heart of understanding. We have met the wounded Fae, that resilient, luminous spark of our inner child, carrying the indelible imprints of the past, the echoes of our becoming. We have traced how the reverberations of early trauma and dysfunction can sculpt our adult lives. Yet we have also reclaimed a crucial truth. These manifestations are not evidence of inherent flaws, but profound testaments to our intelligent, adaptive survival responses. And most vitally, we've begun to illuminate the sacred, actionable path of reparenting, exploring different ways that are potent to reestablish safety, to listen with fierce compassion, and to meet long unmet needs, and to define our sovereignty, our boundaries, all in service to nurturing that precious intrinsic self. Know this as you move forward from this shared sacred space. The work you are undertaking, this courageous turning inwards towards your own inner landscape, is such a profound spiritual and psychological significance. You are not and never have been alone in this challenge. And it is a challenge, but yet it's ultimately liberating. Every conscious breath taken in self-awareness, every small gesture of compassion extended to your inner child is a monumental step towards radical self-love, unbreakable inner freedom, and the reclamation of your wholeness. I seriously implore you, be fiercely, radically gentle with yourself through every phase of this becoming. And it can hurt to become. As we now draw the boundaries of the salt circle for our time together, yet prepare to carry its transformative magic forward into our lives, may this blessing be a shield and a light for your spirit. May the deep, resonant spirits of authentic healing and the untamed, knowing wisdom of the Fae be your steadfast companions on the path ahead. May your inner child, your wounded Fae, feel the unwavering warmth of your present moment compassion. Like ancient sunlight dappling the forest floor, bringing solace and illumination even to the most hidden, tender places within. And in the quiet spaces between the noise of the world, may you claim, with ever-increasing certainty, moments of profound peace and radical self-acceptance, recognizing that these are not fleeting luxuries, but as your inherent birthright. Blessed be, and so it is. Your sacred work, your inner alchemy, continues its profound unfolding far beyond the confines of this episode, my friend. Therefore, this week I don't just invite you, I empower you to choose, to be deliberate, and then to see how things begin to illuminate. Understand with every fiber of your being that these are not insignificant gestures. Each focused act of conscious, compassionate engagement with these inner realms is potent materials for self-sorcery and inner transformation. And when you are ready to delve deeper, you can join us next time in the Salt Circle as we explore another dimension of this work. Next week on Monday, our episode is titled The Psyche's Altar, Forging Inner Sovereignty Through Radical Self-Awareness. And in that session, we will plunge into the intricate psychology of shadow work. We're going to unearth how understanding your unique mental and emotional architecture becomes a foundational act of profound self-empowerment and radical lasting transformation. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Salt Circle. I'm so happy that we can have this time together to really galvanize each other on our healing journeys and as we meet ourselves in our most authentic and raw form. Remember, you are not flawed. You're just doing shadow work. All right, I'm Daniela. I will see you next week. I'll see you on Monday, same time. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.